It's not even duplicated to that degree today. And you've got to know biology and chemistry and all of these things to do that. You've got to know the body like the palm of your hand to do what they did, to take the brains out through the nose. I mean, it's just unbelievable. The knowledge base that we had, that we have to go back to. We have mortuary temples all over Africa because of the embalming process. And in Ghana, to this day, which are people who came from ancient Egypt, this knowledge is still in Africa. We, I look out at you today. We are, and I want you to say it, we are the ancient Kemetic people of Africa. We are. They didn't go anywhere, they didn't disappear. You know, when the invasions came into the north, when the Greeks and the Romans and the Europeans swept down, they pushed us down. We went further into Africa. Some went across into West Africa, started the kingdoms of Ghana and all those other kingdoms that came about. Same knowledge base. Didn't build the same way. And if you look at the history, you can understand why. But they embedded it in their culture in so many other ways. And I was talking about the king of Ghana, the last one that passed, 4 or 5 years ago. He was embalmed the same way they embalmed the pharaohs. They still carry on that tradition. A lot is not talked about because it's in secret societies. But it's there. And that is us. We are the ancient people who built those pyramids. And we are pulling together all of those files that were taken from us to make us whole again. That's what this knowledge base is all about. That's what we're searching for. You know, we watch all these Star Wars pictures and everything. You see sometimes a great ship take a hit and boom, you know, it's knocked out of commission. But you see everybody in there, all the mechanics and everybody trying to get them computers back running and missing files, and they're trying to put, same thing with us. We have a tremendous spiritual ship. And we took a tremendous hit. But it was all designed by the Creator. We had to go through this underworld in order to come forth. You know, a diamond is put under a whole lot of pressure. A diamond was a piece of coal. But when you put that piece of coal under the pressure of the earth, it comes forth a diamond, one of the hardest substance in the earth. And we have been put under that kind of pressure. And we come forth now, a diamond, a new people, an old people, but a new people for the time of leadership, for the day. And this is critical. This is critical. Is that Elder Baxter? Oh, good to see you. Good to see you. I love this brother. He's full of light. He's full of wisdom. And all the brothers of the brotherhood are that way. So I give this lecture really, I give this lecture really in honor of them. Anything that I may say is because I've been following people like them around and videotaping their wisdom and trying to remember enough of it so I can stand up here. But just about any of you could have done what I've done tonight, because this wisdom doesn't belong to any one person. It's collective of our people. I'm not going to go any further because I want you to see a piece that I did in Zimbabwe. We need to connect our struggle with what's going on in Africa. And Zimbabwe is on the cutting edge. These brothers are on the forefront of liberation for Africa. Europeans came in just like they came in to this continent, and murdered off the people. And when I was talking about, we was down in South Carolina in Bennettsville, when you go to the archives and you look up their maps, you can see, because they have it all. They kept records. That's one thing I say about the white folks. They kept records, not, for records' sakes itself, but they didn't trust each other. So they kept records on each other so that, they insured the ships and so forth for loss and everything. So you had to have them ship records. Now, them records may not have always been accurate, but they there. So when you go there and you begin to look in the archives, you see where when they came to the shore, when they came here, they went among the people. And if you wonder how the Europeans got around the world, they tell you in their own words. Everywhere they went, people welcomed them. People helped them. Everywhere, including Africa. So when they came here, they left these records where they went out among the people, and they knew longitude and latitude because that's how they got here. And the Moors taught them that. But they marked out every village, within their sphere, because they came here to take the land from the beginning, but the people didn't know it. So they would go out among the people and pretend to befriend them, and they would count how many men in the village, where the village is, its defenses, and so forth and so on. And they wrote it, and you see it right there on their maps now. This village, 700 men, that village, 600 men. They can be taken with 30 men with rifles. So they went among the people and they gave them gifts. Blankets with smallpox. They had a mission. And the brothers and sisters of this land didn't know their mission. So they welcomed them and they helped them survive, because they wouldn't have survived if they hadn't had the help. And so they left all this in their records. They tell you there is no records that the Europeans left where they say that they went into lands where our people were, where native people were, and the people attacked them, jumped on them, and killed them, unless they had been there before and the people knew who they were. But for the first time, no matter where they went, the people were hospitable. And they went around, Same thing happened in Africa, in Zimbabwe. But Zimbabweans are brave brothers. I really enjoyed being there with Mugabe, and I interviewed some of the military people who launched the struggle against Ian Smith, and who defeated the British along with the Americans and those forces, and won their land back, but it was in a compromise. And the compromise was that they wouldn't put the white folks off the land right away. They'd give the white folks an opportunity to sell the land, and Britain was supposed to pay for the land, and America was supposed to pay for the land, and then the white folks would leave. And they gave them 10 years to do this. So that's been a whole lot longer than 10 years. But the people got tired because the white folks still owned all the land, still control the economy, was still doing everything. So the same people who went to war the first time to get them out decided they'd have to go back to war again and get them out again. So this film is about the land grab, and of course America, when I say land grab, about putting these white folks off of the land and taking their land back. Because all over Africa is not free. It's still a colonial state primarily, and the Europeans still have control of the land. But these brothers tell their story in this film, and we need to be with them in every way that we can, because their victory is our victory. And if they go down, it sets us back that much further. So if I can get the lights, we're going to show this without any further ado. me 1 second here. I don't know what happened. Our video, there it is. Okay, I think it's coming up.
This is a documented report on the fact-finding committee organized by Councilman Charles Barron of Brooklyn, New York, to go to Zimbabwe to determine if the allegations made by the British and American governments are true. The British and American governments have alleged that the Mugabe government of Zimbabwe in Africa is a dictatorial and illegitimate government. They say that the Mugabe government does not allow opposition forces freedom of expression, that the government is oppressive to its people. It inflicts violence on its political opposition, they say. Youth gangs are organized to terrorize oppositional forces. Rape camps are set up to victimize wives and daughters of the opposition, claims the American and British government. They also say that the government of Zimbabwe has misused the resources of the country and induced starvation and criminality, and that it is unsafe to travel there. As a result of all that is going on inside of Zimbabwe, they conclude, the American and the British government, that they themselves will bring about the overthrow of the Zimbabwe government, just like they are doing in Iraq with Saddam Hussein. The fact-finding committee cautions that you should look at all sides of the situation, even at those who are bringing the allegations, and why. The West has a propaganda campaign to demonize Mugabe. They say that Mugabe is driving the whites from their farms and killing them. We met with the war veterans to get a history of the land problem.
Yes, my name is Munyaradzi Nike. So, as a war veteran, I regrouped with my fellow cadres and we formed an association for the war veterans, those who had fought through the struggle. And the government recognized our association as early as in 1993 with a number of veterans. Officially, the act was passed in Parliament in 1997 when we actually were recognized as a welfare organization. We have a Department of War Veterans Affairs in the Ministry of Defense, because that's where we fall into the Ministry of Defense. Our right now, provincial field officer is here.
Right now, our number range between 40 and 45,000. My name is Kagazai Kanda. I was born on the 30th of September 1954, left and went to join the armed struggle in 1975. I was trained in Tanzania, Boro, and I came back to fight in France in 1976. August. I fought in Tangwena sector and was the field commander during the war. After the war, I joined the Ministry of Youth, and then Ministry of Political Affairs, and now I'm with the Ministry of Defense. But after the war, I also went to university and studied for a bachelor degree, honors degree in politics and administration. And I'm currently studying for my MBA degree.
Was it your understanding initially that you were going to be given land as a reward for having fought in the war and having helped liberate the country? What was the original promise?
Yes.
You understood it?
It was not a promise.
Yes.
It was actually the cause of going to war.
That was the general cause.
Yes.
To
main cause,
take back the land.
yeah, main cause of going to war was to fight and take and reclaim the land that was stolen from our ancestors. And after the war, or during the war, we were mobilizing people to say, as soon as we win this war, we are going to get land. And after that, of course, in the early 80s, the resettlement program started, but on a very low scale because of the willing seller, willing buyer policy. The white commercial farmers who were owning most of the land were not willing.
They were not willing to sell the land.
They were not willing to sell the land to the government.
To government, yes.
For resettlement of the people. And during the war, since we were promising the people that as soon as we win to build the country, we will give you land. That didn't happen. And after 15, 20 years, the people, the black people of Zimbabwe still had no land. And they were asking us as fighters, as people who had fought during the war,
to say, where is the land that you promised to give us?
Yes.
After the war, it's now 20 years.
It was the peasants.
It was the peasants now, who were now overcrowded in the communal lands.
And they were saying, we are still crowded.
We are still crowded.
You people were saying, you support us during the war. Fight, let us fight the whites. And if we win, get independence, we'll get back the land. Now where is the land? So that led us to actually invade the farms, to occupy the farms as a demonstration.
In fact, the Masvingo province is the province which initiated these farm occupations in the year 2000, February 15. 7 war veterans occupied a farm that has been underutilized or not utilized at all for the past 13 years. That's the farm they identified to say, if we go and settle on this farm and practice agriculture, I think that's the best way to make use of the land which these people do not want us to have, because definitely there is nothing being done on the farm. It's only being owned, but the owner is not in the country, is left, and the owner is just underutilized, derelict land. So when these occupations started, government definitely realized and recognized it as a demonstration.
So you are actually in a province where the third Chimurenga.
This is the province where the third Chimurenga started.
Now, explain Chimurenga.
Chimurenga.
Why the third one?
Yes, the third Chimurenga.
Let's start from.
Yes, the first one is a resisting force from white settler occupation.
When the whites colonized this country, our forefathers, our ancestors, actually fought them. No,
Yes.
they resisted.
They resisted.
Because they were coming to colonize us, and our forefathers, Wanambia Handa, Wanaseguga Gubi, Wanamashaya Mombe, and Wanachingaira, Wanachifu Makoni, they were actually resisting. Through fighting, using bows and arrows.
Yes.
They were fighting the colonizers who had guns. So that is what we call the first Chimurenga. And they were defeated naturally because they were overpowered because the whites had superior weapons. But they actually said, you have defeated us now, but our bones will rise against you.
Indicating that their spirit of a revolution will not die physically like they defeated our forefathers. But it is now the bones which are said to rise in the fight to reclaim this land are the children or the grandchildren who would still dress the spirit of a revolution.
I must ask you this question. What did our ancestors, what was the loss to them, both in terms of life, freedom, etc.?
Yes, they lost their lives, they lost their land, they lost their cattle.
Their cattle, yes, even their wives,
yes, and
their children, able men who were able to even defend
their resources.
The resources,
the animals, the trees, the fruit trees, and so on. So basically they lost everything, the whites. And they lost their dignity.
How many persons were destroyed in terms of that war? The first showing.
Literally, we cannot exactly say the figure was so many, but it was literally in their thousands. Because the whole country, starting from Matabeleland, Mashonaland, Nikaland, and even this area, they all rose against the whites. So the losses in terms of numbers was literally in their thousands.
I definitely made that our economy, in terms of the African economy, it was destroyed.
So literally, everything was transferred from the African
to the white man, including
done under conquest only.
Yes, it was definitely done under conquest, taking the fertile land where you had the flowing rivers, the big mountains, all the rich resources were taken under conquest.
How then were the Africans treated by the Europeans as a colony? How were they treated in their daily life? What were they forced to do?
Yes, you see, when we talk of the treatment of Africans, it was mainly to achieve the development of the white man's desires to become more economically empowered. So in Zimbabwe, the bridges, the railway line, all was done under forced labor. Even the structures, you would mold the bricks, build the structures, everything done under forced labor. The entire infrastructure in the towns, on the roads, on the railway line, all was done under forced labor.
Unpaid or paid?
Unpaid.
Unpaid.
Unpaid, yes. Unpaid.
And the subjugation extended up until, did you have any access in terms of coming into town, using any facilities? Talk about that. We would have developed the towns under forced labor. We were not even allowed to get into town or to walk on the pavements. They were left entirely to the white settlers. Shops were restricted to the African townships. You could not get into town and do whatever you want. Even walking on the pavement was not allowed. What? Walking on the pavement in town, you cannot. What would happen? You will be arrested. That is the white man's area. It will be a white man's area.
The black person was only welcome in town as a gardener,
or a cook. Yes.
These are some of the grievances which actually motivated people to start the citizenship movement.
Yes.
First, initially, there was forced labor. And from forced labor, they progressed on to paid labor. But paid labor, it was just a pittance. They were paying the people, you see. And besides, those who had become urbanized, they also possible removal of people from the land through the Land Apportionment Act, the Animal Husbandry Act, and our people were just being grouped into areas called reserves, reserved for Africans, and they were not the most semi-arid regions. That's what was reserved for us.
I wanted to know a little bit about what the war itself was like, but You were giving me the background for what led up to the second memorandum, the conditions. Perhaps you would add something to it, and then begin to tell me how you went into battle and what you were up against, and what was your thinking at the time, a young man.
You know, the way we took it up from the first surrender, it was natural. You could actually not tell how you were recruited. The nationalists who were our political leaders mobilized us. They taught us about how this country was colonized, and that incited us to go and take up arms. Take up arms to fight the whites. And the conditions under which we lived, the type of schools that the education system was so bottlenecked that even if you were very bright, you couldn't go far because the schools were very few. And there was no fertile land to till. So the life for the black, the indigenous person was very difficult. So we thought it better to go and take up arms to fight during the war. So a lot of people, young, middle-aged, married, single, actually left for Mozambique, for Zambia, and sought military training in those places like Zambia, Tanzania, Mozambique, far abroad as China, Russia, and some such countries, some such socialist countries. And when we come back, of course, before we went under training, we underwent military training. We stayed in camps in Mozambique. Life was a bit difficult because there was a lot of hunger in the camps, but we had a lot of morale because we actually knew what we were waiting for. So as soon as one got military training in outside bases, in outside countries, then one would actually be given missions either to work in the various departments in the army headquarters like in Chimoyo, in Maputo, in Beira, in Tanzania, in Lusaka, and so on. But some, like myself, were actually taken to go and fight the real war in the front. And it was actually a very exciting experience. Everyone who was trained, everyone who was military trained aspired to go and confront the real enemy, the white. It was actually an honor, and it was actually the ambition of everyone to go and actually fire at the enemy.
The first thing was to go and hand out for the white settler to say, yes, this time you contact my forefathers using the gun, now I also have the gun, let's see who will win. And definitely it was a battle of guns. And
yes, and I still remember my first battle. We went to attack a certain big enemy camp in the Honde Valley called Ruda. And I was a commander of a section that was in control of a very heavy weapon. In our terms, it was a very big weapon called a recoilless rifle. So it was the biggest artillery that we had. And we actually fired rockets towards the enemy camp. And we destroyed it. And we were very excited when it went up in flames.
That was the first major victory.
That was our first battle.
How many people in your unit?
When we went to attack that camp, we were about 150. Yes. But the others actually went back to Mozambique for other missions. We remained in the front and organized our own local battles in the front.
How many enemy was in that competition?
It was difficult at that moment to actually reconnoiter and find out how many were there. But I think there were more than 90 enemy troops
Yes.
in that camp.
And all of you came home.
Yes, we were all.
In most cases, in our battles, we would experience very low numbers or losses.
Yes.
In most cases, no losses at all. Because with guerrilla warfare, you identify your enemy, you identify the terrain to use when you retreat without the enemy's knowledge. And on attack, you will definitely understand that guerrilla warfare used not to take, it takes 45 seconds, 15 seconds is quite a lot.
Really?
15, 20, 30, 40 seconds, a minute, you would expect Air Force to get to your place. So you discharge your fire and you go, the Air Force will come when you are already out of the radius.
Yeah, but it was
The enemy Air Force.
The enemy Air Force would come.
Yeah.
We never had the Air Force to assist us.
Yeah, it was.
The enemy Air Force would come when we are already out of radius.
Yeah, but it was not smooth sailing. It was not easy.
Yes.
Remember, we were on foot. We didn't have any vehicles, so we were carrying our weapons and our ammunition at our backs.
With our best, yes.
And we were confronted with the enemy Air Force, as he says. We had helicopters. We had only small arms that were portable, so that we could run with it carrying the weapons. So we were up against a very well-equipped enemy that was backed by the foreign forces. That was backed by Britain, backed by America, backed by the NATO countries.
Planes.
You see?
You see all sorts of aeroplanes coming.
And you captured
The
some of
Mirage
them.
bombers.
Yes.
You were against
Yeah.
big bombers?
Yeah.
Yes.
You would find it. If it's a serious battle, you would find the Hawks, the supersonic concourse, the Mirage planes coming in to bomb the small hill or the area you would have made an attack.
I understand that they also use napalm.
Yes, they used napalm. And that's why we could not take long to keep at a better position. Because, you know, once the enemy air force comes, you will not manage to leave the area because they will drop the napalm bombs or drop their ground force from the helicopters or from the big planes. Then you are encircled and you are caught up. And I remember one day when we had a battle early in the morning, I said that with my colleague, comrade, and we had the helicopters over our heads from 7 o'clock to 4:30. They could not catch up with us. They failed. But they were trying their best to encircle us, to get us, surrender, but they could not because we were managing to use all the tactics we were trained for in the war.
So when the British came to the table, they did not come to the table for any other reason outside of their getting bus kicked.
Yes, remember the Smith regime was an extension of the British. So it was because we had defeated them in the battlefield that they agreed to go to the docks. Otherwise, they wouldn't have agreed to go to the docks had we not actually won the war in the battlefield.
Then why the Lancaster Agreement? Why didn't you just go ahead on and wipe them out?
You know, we who were the fighting forces on the ground, that was our aim, to actually capture the whole country. But you know, diplomatically, if the enemy says let's talk, and you say we don't want to talk, it will actually be against you because you will be seen as people who don't want peace, but people who are warmongers, people who are war hungry.
Yes.
So when
our leadership was very careful
Yes.
of the effects of from Bush office type of a win or a victory. So this conference, Lancaster House conference negotiations actually brought with it peace. But the peace that we understand prevailed from amongst our leadership was that focus on reconciliation, reconciling with the enemy in order to manage peace in the country. And then we would look into that political situation settled, that security, military situation settled, then it actually led us to look into our economy from a better front than when we made it from Bush office.
Yeah.
We could have had a lot of sabotage on the country's economy, like in Mozambique. you would have everything destroyed, and it means the war that you would have fought would have not actually covered a change in the system of government. And remember, it was not the infrastructure which was wrong, or the bridges or the roads, but the system of government, which we wanted to change in favor of the African.
And remember, we had supporters, we had friendly countries.
Frontline states.
Yeah, we had frontline states that was supporting us during the war. And when there was this opportunity of us getting to a table and talk peace, we couldn't refuse, because you know the war was very damaging to our neighbors as well. A lot of resources were actually being channeled into the war. So the sooner we had peace, the better. That is why we agreed to come to the table and talk peace rather than fight it out.
But while we are looking at...
No, we are not regretting it at all.
While we are looking at this issue of having gained our independence through a ceasefire and something like that, we still are made to understand that the enemy has not actually forgotten about his tactics. When we look at this land issue, which is so honorable and which would mark the end of the African war, that is owning land, but whilst we want to look at land itself to redistribute it equitably, you will find out that whilst we are trying to even negotiate for equitable land redistribution, these white settlers are taking negotiations as a way of resistance. They just enter into dialogue as a way to resist. So they don't come up with any feasible solutions. What they want is to keep on and remain holding on to the title of land.
I've been president of the Commercial Farmers Union for a little over a year now. I'm into my second term of office. David has been our director for many years as a director of the Commercial Farmers Union, and David is a farmer in his own right as well. So we, as farmers, we're well represented here. We try and keep politics out of our daily lives, and as representing farmers, of course, there's a lot of political issues face us all the time. But we welcome you here, and hopefully we can answer your questions in an open and frank manner, however you'd like to ask.
Well, let's start off with, you said you lost a lot. And what is your view of how things have been going, and what have you lost?
This is your farm.
No, that's right. I'm the manager.
Oh, you're the manager?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with the government, how you've been treated, and etc.?
Okay, now, what's happened on this particular farm is we've lost that side of the farm. Okay, that side over there is, we used to own both sides, so that side is gone.
How much territory?
It's 2,500 acres.
Was the original?
No, it was originally 5,000. It's roughly been cut in half.
I see.
Had to move the game. We had a game farm here, so we had to leave the game behind. And that's basically it. So
You have
just because the land was taken.
What do you have on this side then? You have
We had the lodge. We had some cattle, some citrus trees, and ostrich farm. And then the game as well. We've got game on this side as well.
Do you know of anyone who have been killed, any farmers who didn't leave?
Only in the beginning. Not this year, but in the beginning.
see yourself ever in a position to help the new farmer on the other side with your expertise? Would you consider it?
No, I think there's enough animosity as it is, and the government's not trying to, maybe, I don't know, depends what he wants, but it's only a game farm. He doesn't need a tractor to plow, he doesn't need
at all from the state, and this is what I would say is very aggressive and hard times for us as the farmers. Sure, there's a land reform program to go ahead, we don't mind that. The way it's being done is very detrimental to many of our members. Many of our members have lost billions of dollars and have had no respite or compensation to the state.
How much do you blame Britain at all for the Lancaster agreement, not putting the funds that they...
The Lancaster Agreement
stated that monies to pay white settlers for their land, as the new government of Zimbabwe repossessed it, would be provided by the British government with aid from the U.S.
Diplomatic failure between our country and our president and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom to engage in a constructive way. The discussion about our history, how white farmers came to be what we were, has exacerbated a difficult situation. Let me say immediately that in 1980, for those of you who don't know, there was a Lancaster House conference involving all the parties from Zimbabwe, Rhodesia. We were again under British rule. We had a British governor here at that time, and went to Lancaster House to negotiate an independence dispensation and a constitution. And the sticking point for some 6 weeks, as I recall, was over what authority the new government was going to have in terms of dealing with land owned by private people in Zimbabwe. Bearing in mind that at that time the people involved in the War of Liberation professed to be socialists and were driven by socialist communist philosophy. So freehold title of land and ownership as you enjoy in your own country was an issue. The breakdown in what has come to be seen to be a serious, certainly in Southern Africa, rift between this country and the United Kingdom, and to some extent your own country and the European Union, has arisen primarily out of the totally different perspectives of what was agreed at Lancaster House, what the expectations were by members of my government, and what now appears to be the approach by the British government. I'm not blaming the British, sir. I'm just saying that my President Mugabe, when he went to the first Commonwealth Heads of Government conference in Edinburgh to meet Tony Blair, and he tells us attempted to engage him on Britain obligations to our country in terms of a land reform process. And in simple terms, there was no acceptance with the new British Prime Minister of the history. The questions that we hear so much about, what was wrong in the past, how blacks were dispossessed of their land without compensation in terms of a colonial regime, the British South Africa company policy to the appropriation of land in this country. I mean, there's a long history lesson there, it's well recorded. But that fundamental point I make to you is now very important. Why? Because my government has carried out a land reform program where they've acquired 95% of the land owned by my members. 95%. We haven't been paid compensation because of the diplomatic failure I referred to between the British and my own government.
You know, we might say, well, wow, you know, like here is we in the year 2002, and still this question, you know, has not been resolved. What would your response be, you know, to that? You know, so some might say, you know, Africans deserve to have their land back, and they should be given money to help develop it because of what happened during colonialism.
It's absolutely legitimate question. It is a fundamental cause, as I said in my opening remarks. It's true that in the early part of this century, blacks were dispossessed by whites. My grandfather came here 1893. He was a policeman for Cecil Rhodes, who was an arch colonialist, I'm sure. But us as white Zimbabweans acknowledge there were wrongs in the past. We've always said we agree we must have a land reform program. But the form and process must be to build on what is good.
First, and this is a common sense question, did Great Britain, UK, benefit from that period of time when they were here? The answer, of course, is yes, they profited. They made a substantial amount of money. Then it was the white farmers and the Zimbabwean government would come together and then go as a united voice to the UK, not because it appears, just being a person on the outside looking in, that the powers that be have played a divide and conquer game. Where there's unity, there's strength. And one time, Zimbabwe appeared to be, based on your comments, one. Now they have us versus them, divide and conquer. It's important to come together and to stand by the leadership and then to go to Great Britain and demand as a united voice them to live up to their end, because they have benefited over the years from when they had a government here. That's the first point. And the second one, that was just a statement. And the second, well, what's your idea? So I'm curious today. We all accept that there was an injustice. There should be some land redistribution. Do you have a plan written out in black and white that you can say to the Zimbabwe government, here's my plan? And would you consider this plan? Not to say it's right or wrong, but would you consider this plan? Have you ever come out with a plan other than to say, your plan is wrong, and we're being dispossessed, we're being displaced, we're being gentrified, if you will. Have you come up with a written plan? And do you have it? And if you do have it, I'd like to see it. Do you have a plan? A written out plan?
We've got many plans, let me say. The first concrete proposals we put forward, because in the first 10 years of independence, I described about those halcyon days. We were one together. Land reform was going ahead. The British were playing their part. The Americans were not playing their part as much as we would like to, because we didn't understand. Remember, the British at Lancaster House said, we can't afford to deal with this issue on our own. So Henry Kissinger, who was a smart man and knew more about diplomacy than we do in farming, he said, it's okay, we'll take care of this and we'll help. This is what we were led to believe. So to 1990 was fine. Went to Britain, 1997, to stand together with our government to say, this is what we need. But your question to me about, can we as farmers have a separate plan to lobby the government? The answer is, we don't like, as farmers and Zimbabweans, to go, this is a tradition and experience in our country, to go unilaterally and talk to Britain about these issues.
No, that's in Britain.
No, wait a minute. And the president is, my president Mugabe is asking, he said, Hasler, when we changed the constitution to say compensation for land is the responsibility of the former colonial power, why didn't you support me? Because I said, hey, I have no power as a Zimbabwean to deal with the British government. That is my government's responsibility. We have always looked to you. I mean, we're not an independent group of people who can go around the world and unilaterally make demands on other people. We want to be with the government to make these obligations.
Mr. Haslett?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Haslett, sir, thank you for calling me, sir. You do have the power because I have read statements all the way back in New York that has come out by way of the white farmers. I have read statements, so you do have an opportunity to shape the opinion by voicing your position. And the same way you can voice your position in opposition or disagreement, you can also voice your opinion. So I just want to disagree with you on that part. I think that you can't say I oppose on this part, and then when you have an opportunity, as the president asked you, he said, no, I'm not going to say nothing because we don't have a right to have an opinion. We don't have a right to have a voice. That's the government. You have a voice sometimes, and you don't have a voice other times. Unite, in my humble opinion, and I'm only on the fact-finding mission. I've only been here for a couple of days. I only have but limited information. Unite with this government, and together this government and white farmers, and send that message across the media, across America, across the world, that you're united, and then go forth and have a plan behind closed doors where you sit down and you have a plan and say, we're going to stick together, they're going to come at us with this question, they're going to come up with it this way, but we're going to stay united. Because I think that Britain owes Zimbabwe. And I think America has a role to play also, is by this delegation led by Councilman Charles Barron, we was leaders speaking to America, they have a role to play as well. But if the white farmers and the Zimbabwe government stand together, I think we can get some of the things that you rightfully deserve.
Thank you for the advice, Chair. This is why you're a politician and I'm a farmer. And I know how to make cattle fat and how to grow corn and those things. And that's why we're totally inadequate to deal with these political issues, which we relied on our government, sir, to deal with the British government, because we're a farmers' union who's to protect and promote the interests of our members, and we know how to protest about prices. You know, when the world market prices are bad and the Americans are dumping maize and taking subsidies and we're unsubsidized, we know about those things, sir. But this partisan politics and so on, every time we put our hand in the fire, damn, it gets burned.
Can you see the UK could be using you? Can you see how
I'm quite certain that lots of people are manipulating us.
Yeah, I just want to swing it to Adam. See, I don't know how you give the appearance of being politically, naive and innocent. You're just a farmer. But I'm telling you, in America, we've gotten a lot in the press from your farmers that have come out in the press that shows that they're quite politically astute, and it's not just farming. And that's why we're here also, because we've gotten stuff in the press from white farmers. So, it's like just putting our cards on the table, and that there was a lot, as you have mentioned, a lot of the farmers were, and they have a right, because this is a democracy, to be with, which also gives credence to our concern and gives validation to that this is a democracy in progress, it's a work in progress, that you can sit here and say that white farmers were with the opposition party, some were with, so democracy at work. But there's a lot of politics around farming. There's more than just making that cow's belly, big and the eggs. Let Adam ask him that.
At some point in your presentation, you mentioned something to the effect of the British government was trying to help all the African nations equally, but to some extent trying to do their part of their responsibility. And I say that because, to my knowledge, the British helped the Kenya, right? The nation of Kenya with something like 532 million pounds over a decades period in a similar land redistribution program. Whereas in this case, in a 15-year period from 1980 to 1995, when the Lancaster Agreement was broken, they had only helped with something to the effect of 35 million pounds compared to 532 million pounds. So perhaps that's why this government had no recourse other than to start their own land redistribution program, because they were left out in the cold, so to speak, by the British government.
Yeah.
Every meeting we've had, we met with government officials, we met with the U.S. Embassy, and we wanted to make sure that we heard all sides of the story in open meetings, because we've been hearing a lot of stuff in the United States about what was happening in Zimbabwe. So we are on a fact-finding mission, and we wanted to keep it as open as possible. Even in the U.S. Embassy, they allowed us to bring in to take pictures and stuff, and then all of the meetings we had with government officials, we just want to keep it open, and we thought your input would be important because you had information that would be helpful to us, and we just want to get all sides of the story.
That's absolutely fine. But we were not told this when the meeting was set up. We were not told it was an open meeting. I was told it was a meeting with a delegation from the United States.
If that's true, do you have problems with this?
I have problems with the press thing.
Really? How many of them?
No, we don't have any time.
And plus, we're going to talk to the media. You're going to talk to the media. People have been talking to the media.
The press. With our office. Okay, the Herald has a mission against us. So I'd rather not to be talking to the Herald.
Well, he's with us down here.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
So our only intention was just to have open meetings, many open meetings this weekend. We just met with the farmers, the media was right there, pictures, press, councils, nobody.
You need to know that we talk with the press on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Can I just explain our work? We are a medical human rights organization. Okay, we deal with victims of violence. Okay, so client confidentiality to us is everything. If the clients choose to talk to the press after they have seen us or before they have seen us, that is their choice. We don't talk to the press about individuals. Yeah.
Okay, I understand that. I'm just saying that I don't know if the client confidential thing works when you're talking about the media. Maybe here.
We never talk about names.
Right, and that's what we didn't expect you to do that here. So even if the press here, what you've been saying has been heard around the world, it's been heard all over, so we wouldn't expect you to name a name in front of the media here.
We just the problem with the press.
We wouldn't expect you to say any names. So our mission is to get both sides of the story. And that's why the meeting with you and us today was very important, because we want to make sure that we don't just hear one side.
We appreciate you requesting to meet us.
We met with the government officials, several ministers. Today we met with the U.S. Embassy, with the White Farmers Association. Now we want to meet with you, as well as the NDC. We're going to meet with the NDC and Daily News.
Okay,
so then we'll let you.
So we're a human rights organization that's been in existence from 1993, dealing with people who have had experiences of organized violence and torture. So that's either pre-liberation or during the 1980s or since 1990 when there was a fair amount of intimidation. And then in 1998 with the food riots, when there was a huge upswing in state organized violence. We have a long record of publications. We have over 76 publications to our name, investigating the effects of organized violence and torture on the communities. Okay, so we've done a lot of retrospective studies on what happens to communities who have had violence used against them, what the long-term medical and psychological sequelae are to that. In the year 2000, when there was the defeat in the referendum and violence stepped up considerably, we then started seeing a lot of fresh violence, a lot of new politically motivated violence from both sides. Okay, we won't beat about the bush about that, and we're a completely non-partisan organization. And then we saw an upswing in violence each time there was a by-election. So when there was a by-election going to happen in an area, there would be an immediate upswing in violence.
Have you had any documentation of rape camps?
We have not had documentation of
We do not comment on anything that we have not actually physically seen in this office. All right? That is our mandate, is unless the victim has walked through this office or through, we have a number of doctors who work for us in the rural communities, unless they have been physically visualized, we do not comment. We have had 10 rape victims that we have seen this year that have been involved in politically motivated rape. Okay, they have been told that this is happening to them because either their husband believes
I just want to kind of cut through some of this. What happens is that the U.S. and Britain and Europeans embed all kinds of organizations all over Africa. They embed these organizations in ministry. They embed them in human rights organizations. They fund these organizations. These organizations come in pretending that they are there for the benefit of African people. But what they do is that they manufacture, a lot of times, false information. But we had to talk to them. We had to talk to everybody to gather facts. This particular group.
I'm also in that capacity the leader of the house.
This brother is one of the officials of the Zimbabwean government. Very important brother.
I've been in this capacity since 2000, since the election of 2000. I'm also in the highest executive body of our party, which we call the Politburo, and I'm the Secretary for Legal Affairs in the party. I have been a member of the ruling party since its inception as a youth. I joined the youth wing of our party in 1963. Before I was minister, I was Attorney General from 1989 to 2000. Before that, I was a senator and chairman of the Senate Legal Committee. And of course, before that, I was in legal practice in the private sector. I thought I should just give you that brief. I want to extend a very, very warm welcome to all of you for coming to Zimbabwe. You know, Mr. Charles Byron, the leader of the delegation, and your entire delegation are most welcome. Please feel home away from home. And I hope that we have not disappointed you in any way in the manner that we have received you. We want to thank you most sincerely for the courage that you have found to come to a country which has been demonized, and which in fact, I'm sure before you left, you were made to feel that we are a country which is in a turmoil. And clearly, of course, your personal safety would have been uppermost in your mind before you came here. So I'm happy that you found the courage and the open-mindedness to want to come to see the situation for yourself. We are a very small country of 13 million people. We have just had our census in August. I don't know what figures it is going to throw up, but we think that we are around 13 million people. We have no territorial ambitions on any country, on anybody. We have no world ambitions. Small as we are too small to entertain any world ambitions. Our only ambition, and it's a burning ambition, is that we gain access to our own resources, and also that we are able to be left by ourselves to control our own destiny, small as we are. I know this is a very difficult thing in the world we live in, but essentially what drives us is the ambition to have access to our resources and also to drive our own destiny. We are happy that you came because it affords us an opportunity to tell our story. Our story has been distorted to a point where, for instance, when we read about ourselves as leaders, and also when we read about our president, when we read about our country, we can't recognize ourselves. Basically, we are put out as beasts and so forth, and we know we are not beasts. So when we read about ourselves and how the extent to which we have been dehumanized, distorted, we clearly cannot recognize ourselves or even our country. We almost come to a point where we think they must be telling a story about some other country that we know not about. So I'm very happy that you came to see us. Our other ambition, of course, to the extent that we have a voice in world affairs, is basically to demand a fairer and just world information and communication order. What we've experienced, more particularly in the past 2 years or past 3 years, has been that the world press and media is dominated by few interests, to a point where it's only their perception about the world or what they want the world to be, which in fact is propagated. And we believe that I think we need to have a fairer information and communication order, so that even the voice of small countries, of small peoples, is also heard on the world arena. And unfortunately, we have not had that privilege to have our voice heard internationally and on the world scene. We also want to engage the developed countries in a genuine way. What we mean is that we have interests which are always trampled upon by the developed countries, especially in the economic field. We believe that we should engage the developed world so that we come up with a fairer and a just world economic order, where we must no longer continue the same economic relationship where we are just the mere suppliers of raw materials and we export jobs on a daily basis, and the prices are all determined from even of our own resources. Whether we are talking of minerals, we are talking of anything that we produce, the prices are determined outside Africa. The terms of trade are determined outside Africa. And we believe that much of our underdevelopment is a result of these inequitable economic terms in the world arena. So we are very much active in all third world organizations.
We went all over Zimbabwe, went to the different communities. The people were just like us.
Oh, you read about us coming?
Yeah. Look like us, act like us. They was us.
Yes, you take. Yes.
Said we were coming.
Yeah, for a week. Are you enjoying?
Yes.
That's take a photo. Yes, somebody can take your photo. Where's the
Is it any better, any worse, or the same as last year?
The problem is milling, sugar, cooking oil, that's the only staple food. Yes.
What about the land question, farms and all that?
The farm people are very happy about it.
Oh, very happy about it?
Yes, they are happy about it. I wish if rain can come, people will be okay. That's the only problem. That's the problem.
No rain. They were in a drought. Hadn't rained in a couple
No
years.
rain. That's the problem which is causing all this. People
No rain, a drought.
We are.
You said there's no rain.
No rain, that's what the problem is. Yeah, but otherwise everything is okay. Yeah, it's okay. We are still nice.
Do you think Mugabe doing the right thing with a repossession of the farms?
He's doing everything good channel. Good channel. He's doing everything good channel. on red route. We are suffering.
How many times do you eat every day? Do you eat more than one meal a day?
One meal a day. Special rice. That's the only thing we are using. Rice.
He wants to help. He wants to help.
So we just cook.
Oh, how did he go?
Three shots in this bro.
Just people put in this country. You know, that one I gave you to taste. My grandson always tell me to watch news every day. So I was so excited about you coming. So I didn't know God is great. You were just passing by. So I saw you. I'm so happy.
Everywhere we went, people greeted us like this.
On here, that's my grandmommy's place.
Very good.
But they would have us to believe that if we go to Africa, we'll be in such danger, you know.
So you have to
Oh, yeah.
They took us in their home.
Now they're using this modern one. Yeah, but I like this one.
Yeah, so, James.
Remember last year we talked about the first stone of the church.
Yeah, I remember these. Sure.
They didn't have much, but what they had, they was willing to share.
Good.
Yeah,
Good to be
welcome
here.
inside. Yeah.
Good.
I very few friends.
Yes.
We are very liberal. We welcome you very much. But we are very glad that you come here to photograph us. Say that we know that you will love us, and you will remember me. Remember us wherever you go. Yeah. We thank you for that. We are just glad that we have to give you something better. Taking us this photograph. Yeah. Should have you paid you a lot? Because we know that it is expensive to come here and you want to spend a lot of your hard-earned demand to take us photographs. We could have paid you for that. We are very much interested.
Very good.
Yeah, we are very much interested. It's only made of this economy that which I experienced. Yeah, we are eating a tough life, but now we
want your address.
You want my address?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't give it to her, Viola.
How are you, sir? New York. We love you. Okay. We love Zimbabwe. We pray for Zimbabwe. Get all the forces away from Zimbabwe so Zimbabwe can prosper. Okay? Beautiful. We love you.
Okay, brother.
Zimbabwe.
This is Councilman James Davis. He was murdered several months ago in City Hall in New York.
New York, what do you do? I'm an elected official, a politician. They get some say. More importantly, today I'm your brother. And we're praying for you. Remove some of this poverty.
Yeah, okay.
You want to go down sometime? Okay, my friend.
We like our bishop as well.
He's the minister.
The minister is seated right, followed by myself. No.
It's different.
It's different.
Bishop.
Anginas.
Anginas.
Anginas, yes, from South Africa.
Oh.
But here we worship under Mawewe. He's the minister of Zimbabwe.
Bishop Mawewe.
Mawewe, yes.
How old is the church?
The church was formed in 1924.
24.
Yes.
Wow.
By Anginas, the Hanyan, the late.
And this is where you pray every weekend?
Yes, this is where we pray every weekend.
What's special about this church? Tell us.
The special about it, we got the prophets who would chase away the bad spirits. You know, we are haunted by bad spirits, some of us. Those bad spirits, they can be chased away
By the water which we pray for the water, we sprinkle on their faces, the demons will run away.
Where's the water?
The water, it was right there, but I think it's finished.
Is it okay if I film?
Yes, with pleasure. I would like you to take the fruit with pleasure.
What is your name?
My name is Andrew Machaya.
Spell your last name.
My M-A-C-H-A-Y-A.
And what is your role for this church?
My role is I am the
Now y'all gonna like this. We're coming to the end, but I want you to see this. I want you to see the way these people worship. This is our brothers and sisters.
You can. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they will understand you very well. They will understand, but I'll translate it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to do that.
Yes. Yeah, fine.
Do we join them?
Yes, you can join the ladies. You see where men are. The ladies, they will see where ladies are.
gentleman from the New York City. Go so the Reverend. Reverend Charles Davis. James Davis.
And Assemblyman Adam Bateman Powell.
Assemblyman Adam Powell. They are all from New York City. Preach the word of God to us. With pleasure.
Thank you. First of all, let's say praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. All right. I want to thank you so much. We came from New York City to do politics, but we were glad that we ran into a spiritual service because all of us are Christians, or most of us are Christians, believe in the Lord. We believe in God. We know that politics is one thing, but God is still on the throne. And we thank God that God is still on the throne. And we're going to go forward ever. So most of us are from New York, but we are Africans from New York. They stole us from here 400 years ago, and we're glad to be back home. Glad to be back home. You got to show me some of the moves so I can go like that. Here it is. Okay.
Support us in bringing pressure to bear on Blair. So you realize the responsibility that we must bear, and bear towards not just them, but towards the majority of the people of the country. It's a new stance as a private society. Thanks for illicit funds.
We are impressed that we were open to see whomever we wanted to see. There's many times that you don't get a chance to see the opposition, see the white farmers, see people who don't agree with you, meet those who do agree. And I think that's what gives this trip credibility. Your host left us alone when we said we needed to be left alone to visit. That happened. We were able to meet with the people and they spoke freely. And I know I can say on behalf of some of us, a lot of the myths have been exploded once you meet the reality.
That's right.
Because unfortunately, in this world, reality is almost relative. It's perception that counts as what people make up the reality and the interpretations of it. So we're just honored that we were able to freely move about the country and talk to supporters as well as critics. And I think that's what gave this a very, very powerful impact. And that's what I think makes this powerful impact. So when we go back,
this is the falls in Zimbabwe.
Yes.
Zimbabwe is such a beautiful country. It is an awesomely beautiful country. But one of the reasons that I wanted to end with this is to bring up the fact that we can have influence in what happens in Africa and here. We have the power. And when we can unite, and I'm not saying, I mean, you know, you saw the film, I'm not saying that all of Africa is where you can just walk all over the place. They have dictatorial governments in Africa as well. and most of these governments are supported by the U.S. and so forth. Colonization is all over Africa. And even here in Zimbabwe, where people are trying to carve out a truly democratic government, the opposition is funded to overthrow that government, and that happens all over Africa. Anytime a government rises up for the people with taking those resources and redistributing them for the benefit of African people, they will be overthrown. There will be an attempt to overthrow them. But we have great power, and I just want to end with that we have been called to leadership. So I thank you for listening. It's been rather long, but we got a whole 2,000 hours in this library, in this archive, so you can gather information. Just like the pluggers, we do have a few tapes over here. I grabbed a couple boxes coming down. So if you want to come over and purchase a few tapes, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Good night. Tapes are $15 each.
We thank Dr. Clemson Brown for this wonderful presentation. This evening you saw some pictures of our portrait over here in the corner that our dear sister Lorraine Nixon painted for this presentation or this lecture series. We took some $5 chances out, but what we're going to do, because we got such a small response, we're going to hold it over until the next series. So those of you who did purchase a ticket at $5, hold on to your tickets. The next series will be June the 5th. I'm sorry, let me make sure I have that date correct. Yes, it's June the 5th. Dr. Jack Felder will be the speaker. Okay, we thank you very much for your support, and everybody have a safe trip home. Thank you.
Excellent. Oh, excellent. Excellent. I want to be just like you. Oh, yes, we are.
Brothers and sisters, we just like to take this opportunity to thank you for coming out, and we hope to see you at our next lecture, which is again June the 5th here at the Cornucopia, featuring Dr. Felder. Again, thank you for coming out and sharing with us the wonderful information that was presented to us by Dr. Reverend Clemson Brown. Hotep, travel in mercy, be safe.
That's all right. Yeah, thank you. Good. Yes, sir. Go on there and get those interviews. That's why stuff last night. What's my brother? Still working, man. I'm ready to go. Jerry, I'm at the club. And Monday, I'm at right. And Monday, I'm right weekend. I mean, that's you know. Yeah. It's like, that's right. Everything is good. Yeah. Great. 9, 12. You was here yesterday, right? When I spoke yesterday. 15 numbers. Look at 7. And remember now, we did that 7 pieces. 7 pieces. like this. Yeah. Oh, yes it is. And that's what makes it so beautiful. I'm coming right back. I'm going to run this down. Hey, my brother. How you doing? Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown. All right. Oh, yeah. Mr. Brown. Oh, man. I'm all right. Mr. Brown, father, the brother, Brown, the brother. All about the liberation, freedom for people, black people, everything. Hey, man, you know me, do. That's why you here. Well, I tell you, when I was a young lad, this man here, he took care of the playground. Whenever I had programs, I'd bring in him and say, Mr. Brown, we can program the playground. He said, got some bring on up here, let's go. We'd hook it up. It's always about keeping the neighborhood right? That's right. That's right. They remember. You know about that. You weren't there, you wouldn't have been there. So, you know, everybody has a part to play. I just thank you for